George McDonald has agreed to take on the best wide receiver room in the country, EIEIO. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, I'm Stephen Willis, a former staff member at Ole Miss and a 10-year veteran of the national media at Yahoo Sports. Also did a little time at WSMV as well. Today on the show, we talk about the nation's best wide receiver room getting a little bit better with the addition of George McDonald coaching them, and Ole Miss Hoops finally gets that road win, and they're 17-3. As I mentioned, I'm Stephen Willis, and this is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're free and available on all the podcast apps and YouTube. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day, and a special hello to the everydayers who make the show what it is. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today. You'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right. George McDonald, not McIntyre. I was thinking Mike McIntyre for a second. George McDonald has agreed to be the wide receivers coach at Ole Miss. And this is actually pretty big news. We talked last week when we said, hey, I was crazy feeling confident about exactly the direction I felt the coaching search was going. And that terrified me because that is never right. If you think you are knowing what's going on in the Ole Miss coaching community and coaching searches, you don't. They do such a fantastic job of keeping a lid on that. It's just like, hey, your hit rate is going to be about 15%. You're going to be basically a double-A Major League Baseball hitter if you put them at the major league level. You're not going to be anywhere where you think you need to be, but it doesn't matter. And I was absolutely sure in my head. It was, like I said, it was crazy disturbing how confident it was, and that's how I knew I was wrong. Ole Miss hired George McDonald from Illinois. And what's interesting about George McDonald, and I'm pretty fired up about that, is he comes from Illinois where he helped converted quarterback Isaiah Williams earn all Big Ten first-team honors the last 2 years. He'll now run an Ole Miss unit with Juice Wells and Tre Harris and Deion Smith and all of those guys. So this is a pretty big deal. Isaiah Williams went over 1,000 yards. Like I said, he was first team all Big Ten. He also had a couple other receivers in that unit that went over 500 yards. And if we remember correctly about that, the head coach at Illinois is Brett Bielema. That's the type of offense they run. Just picture what they did at Arkansas. That's what they did. George McDonald used his experience as an offensive coordinator at Syracuse. He also coached wide receivers at NC State before he went to his alma mater back at Illinois. This is another situation. This was an Illinois man going back home and then leaving again. But you have a situation of similarities with an NFL pedigree. About 10 years ago, he did coach in the league for a couple of years. So all of this goes to put together a unit that can compete at a very high level. I do not expect Ole Miss's offense to look like it did a year ago for multiple reasons. Number one is because they're not going to have Quinshon Judkins. You're not going to have that back that demands 300 carries a year. That's not going to exist. You also are losing a co-coordinator, which had input in the game plan in John David Baker. So the passing game looked a little bit different. George McDonald is going to be the passing game coordinator and wide receiver coach. He is going to have that input in the offense. So one thing I think you can expect to see probably are more shallow crosses and stuff like that. The Brett Bielema and the Wisconsin style and all of that came in, they did a lot of work within about 5 yards on either side of the line of scrimmage, either through jet sweeps, which I think those are going to make an appearance again, or you're going to have shallow crosses on the other side of the ball. They're going to do some mesh type stuff. They're going to do some interesting stuff that will get Tre Harris open down the field. You'll have Juice Wells on the other side. Maybe it's Jordan Watkins, Caden Lee, Deion Smith, whoever's playing that middle position. They'll be meshing with the tight end. I'm convinced that is going to be put in the system. And you will have a offense that instead of being 65% run like they've been roughly 65 to 75% run for the better part of the last 2 years. I think you're going to have an offense that's going to shade 57, 58% run with the addition of George McDonald. It's the bones of the offense, the tempo, the things like that. That's all going to remain the same. They're going to figure out a way to incorporate some concepts into that offensive system where it's going to look a little bit different and take advantage of the personnel they have. And Lane Kiffin is legendary for that. If he has a dominant running back, he runs the ball. If he has a dominant receiver, he throws the ball. He has both had a running back in Derrick Henry that ran for almost 2,000 yards, and he's had a receiver in Marquis that had 120 catches in the season. He doesn't care. He just wants to be effective. And I think the hiring of George McDonald as passing game coordinator and wide receivers, and with the wide receiver room potentially being not just the best room on Ole Miss's campus, but the best room in the country, you can understand how they want to start molding that and shaping that right now, and to make the offense something a little bit more wide receiver centric as opposed to running back centric as it has been. I'm not saying that Lane Kiffin is going to stop running the football. The Ole Miss is still going to be 55, 56, 57% run. That's not going to change. But with the weapons that Ole Miss has out wide and at tight end, and knowing that there could be a little bit of a depth concern potentially at running back, depending on how Logan Diggs does and depending on if Ole Miss brings anybody else in to go with Ulysses Bentley and Kedrick Escano. Depending on that, the wide receiver room is going to be the dominant area, and you need to figure out a way to scheme them a certain way. And that means not just saying, hey, we need to bring people out here to maximize wide receivers. You need to bring somebody in that's a little bit different than what Charlie Weiss is. You need some different concepts that you can throw together within the same game plan to kind of throw off people. You can't go all air raid on a game plan. That's the dirty, dark secret. When everybody knows exactly what you're going to do and exactly how it's going to look, and that play sheet potentially could shrink down to 30 plays and it be consistently, you understand what's going to happen, it's easier to prepare for than if you essentially have 15 from this way, 15 from this way. You can window dress it with motions and different personnel groupings and different formations. But at the end of the day, it's like two opposite end systems coming in together. So I do think George McDonald, what he does is going to complement what Charlie Weiss does in the game plan side. And then you have the mindset of Lane Kiffin, and you're cooking with all. This is a wide receiver unit that, in my opinion, is the best in college football. I think Tre Harris is the best wide receiver coming back in college football. And with the addition of Juice Wells and Deion Smith and Marquis Willis, and then at the tight end position, Caden Prieskorn, Daquan Wright, Hudson Wolf, those guys with the slot receivers of Caden Lee and Jordan Watkins, you have the potential to have a room that is very, very high performing. And I just can't wait to see what it looks like. This is a move, in my opinion, that is designed to maximize that room. When you had Derek Nix as the coach, and then listen, if anybody's heard my show in the past couple of weeks, you know how I feel about Derek Nix. But Derek Nix was a wide receiver coach in an offense that was very running back dominant. It just is what it is. Derek Nix had a specific role, and that was in Mississippi recruiting. And that was before Kelvin Bolden. Okay? You needed to have somebody come in that had a knowledge base, that knew what it took to get to the league, to have that cachet, to get ready to go, because you want to maximize that room. You have an NFL quarterback. You have everything in that room in place to be extremely good. You just need to maximize it. And I think that Ole Miss did that with the hiring of George McDonald. Pretty impressive stuff. Anyway, thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen of the day. We're just getting started. Ole Miss finally put it together on the road. Well, sort of put it together versus Texas A&M, and now are 17-3. Seriously. Passion, drive, and patience, what brings home the winning trophy, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back, period. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. And with all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply, and eBay's Guaranteed Fit is available only to U.S. customers. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 stream channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every single league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Seriously, should be really cool indeed. All right. Ole Miss got their inaugural SEC road win of the season, and they are currently 17-3 in the current season. They are 4-3 in the SEC, but they beat Texas A&M 71-68, and they did it while shooting better than A&M, because A&M did not shoot the ball particularly well at all, other than Wade Taylor. He did everything for that Texas A&M team that you could imagine. But Ole Miss was led by Jaylen Murray, who hit some super clutch shots, including the 30-foot three that gave Ole Miss to the lead with like 22 seconds left to go in the game. I really liked what I saw there. The hustle by Jamin Breakfield was huge. Musa Cisse got banged up, came back in. As it went on, Brandon Murray was instrumental at the end of that game, especially at the foul line, where Ole Miss was nails down the stretch, by the way. Matthew Morrell did not play particularly well, but he did hit a crucial three-point shot at the end of the first half that gave Ole Miss a good try. Good league. And now Austin Nunez got in the game. He is kind of turning into my my little pet favorite project and everything, to where I just want him to do really well. He played really well, had a couple of fouls, hit a big three in the game as well. But Ole Miss won the game 71-68. Three-point shots, Ole Miss shot over 40%. Barely over 40%, but over 40%, 10 for 24. A&M was 6 of 20, and 5 of those makes were by Wade Taylor. If you looked at Wade Taylor, he had 30 points in this game. He scored 30 points. A&M scored 68. That's a problem for Texas A&M, but that's a good ball club, and this was a quad one road win. Ole Miss actually kind of held their own a little bit rebounding. A&M rebounding is really good. They're one of the dominant teams in the country. Ole Miss held their own, and that allowed them to stay in the game, to make runs as necessary. When Ole Miss got into trouble is whenever A&M started hitting the offensive glass and doing the things. But, I think it was like 2 or 3 minutes left to go in the game. A&M went up by 7 points, and it's like, well, this is over. And then like a minute and a half later, the game was tied. And at that point, it was like, well, I don't know if A&M can win this game. Ole Miss fouled more than A&M, 19-17. When Ole Miss fouls more and they're aggressive and they're locked in, they're kind of where they are. The star of the game to me was Jaylen Murray. Ended up with 16 points, 2 rebounds, and 5 assists. Big day for Jaylen Murray. I've talked over and over again about how he was a run stopper because of his ability to hit a big shot. And there's several guys that are plus guys on Ole Miss's team. And, if you look at plus minuses, it tends to go up. Pluses tend to go up on a lot of these players. There's a couple of minuses on the team, but that's going to happen. But I mean, people like Brandon Murray, they provide certain things that brings that up as well. Jaylen Murray ended up on the plus side of that as well. Like I said, he ended up with 16 points, 5 assists, 2 rebounds. The plus minus for the A&M players, other than let's see, Wade Taylor was 0, but like Tyrese Radford was minus 10. Wyden's Levesque was minus 8. They had a major problem on their plus minus situation with that. Now, Tuesday night, I think it's Tuesday night, we'll be live streaming a little Shark Tank Live, and we'll have the Ole Miss Mississippi State game on, I believe, during that live stream. I don't know the exact time at this moment, but we're live streaming Tuesday night, so that's going to be the case regardless. So we will have that. We'll have Tim Thomas. We're moving him to Wednesday this week, so he'll continue to kind of be the day after the midweek game. And we'll just keep going as this basketball team progresses. They're 17-3 right now. If Ole Miss can get past Mississippi State, and that's going to be a tough game, but it being in Oxford, I think that Ole Miss is going to come out and perform pretty well in the Pavilion. And then you have Auburn on Saturday. Auburn has dropped 2 straight games to unranked teams in Alabama and Mississippi State on the road. Auburn coming to Oxford, that could be an interesting type situation as well. What I'm pointing at, what was a must win against Arkansas now looks like just another run-of-the-mill type thing. And that would have been the case regardless. I mean, we need storylines going to the games. We need people to be interested in them, and we need all that. But you have a situation to where, like I said, Ole Miss could be just playing for seeding if this keeps going. Ole Miss has a chance that after this week, it's a chance. I mean, they can do it. Not saying they will. They have a chance to be at 19-3 by next Saturday. That's a pretty ridiculous number if you think about that. If you think about where Ole Miss basketball has been the last few years, it's kind of a ridiculous number. And 19-3, you're just at that point you're playing for seeding. You're getting wins to get as high up in the tournament as you can get seeding wise, because you don't want to be an 8. I think if you want to be a lower seed is somewhere in the 6 range, a 3-6 game, you get past that one, and all of a sudden you can make some hay moving forward. But you don't want an 8, an 8 seed. You don't want to go into the tournament as like a 12 and have to play a 5 either, although a 12 can beat a 5. Ask Marshall Henderson and Ole Miss against Wisconsin. But it's an interesting situation. This week is fun for Ole Miss basketball. It's a free shot. Ole Miss has a chance to be 19-3 coming out of that. If they're 18-4, nobody's going to bat an eye. And at that point, Ole Miss will have an over 500 record going into the turn of the SEC season. Really big time stuff. And I'm kind of impressed with what I'm seeing. I enjoy watching Ole Miss basketball right now. And I can guarantee you this, the next road game, Ole Miss is going to wear powder blue on it because they found something that worked and they were able to get the W. So we'll see exactly how that goes moving forward. Still more to come on Locked On Ole Miss, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm going to let you know the way to destroy your Ole Miss legacy, but you can also get into the coaching game. Just stick around after that. The NFL regular season is wrapping up, has wrapped up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is easy to use, and there's so many different ways to bet, like same game parlays, like multiple bets within the same game. That's something you can do. They also have this new Explore tab with specific bets that you can have. Like, I'm horribly not creative. So stuff like that, it'd be nice to see exactly what other people are betting. They also have a parlay hub, and where you can see the popular parlays that are being bet on games and otherwise. It's pretty cool. They have that and so much more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, it's an official partner of the NFL. Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen of the day, and shout out to the everydayers. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every league. For your second listen, go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to be the first ever to the first ever national sports 24/7 stream channel. Be part of history. All right, so I kind of want to not necessarily rant a little bit in this third segment. There's a couple of things that's bothering me. There's been public outcry that's happened within the fan base over the last week or so. And we'll start with Coach Yo complaining after, I guess it was the Florida game that they played, that Ole Miss had 500 people in the stands or something like that. And they talked about the need for people to follow women's sports and all of that stuff. And she criticized the school and the Oxford community about they should come in and support their team, which I agree with every word of that. Absolutely do. Coach Yo is absolutely right in that situation. Here's where I diverge a little bit. Coach Yo has put the onus on the fan to show up. If you want people to show up, don't charge money to get into the building. If you want to charge money to get into the building, you can't be so selective. And I'll tell you why. In this age of NIL, for better or for worse, the random Joe fan is being taxed at a level that it never has been before. You have extremely inflated prices on season tickets for football and basketball. You have NIL collectives that's important, that's where you're directly influencing the talent that is coming into your program. And all of that means that a random Joe person that has season tickets for football maybe donates at a $20 a month level to the NIL collective. The money that was being used for non-revenue sports like, soccer or baseball, or, well, at Ole Miss, it's a revenue sport, but you can get my idea. Tennis, golf, women's basketball, that money's not there anymore. Money's not there anymore. Whenever you have a situation where you can donate to NIL and actually be in the seats, or you can sit at home and just watch the game on TV while donating to the NIL, a lot of people are going to do that. Period. And I don't think it's in anybody's best interest to criticize attendance in modern college athletics. I know that everybody wants all of this to happen. I just don't think that it should happen, because what the next step is, it's not that they're going to come to a women's basketball game. It's that they're going to stop donating to the NIL collective. That's the way this is going to work. And it's such a delicate ecosystem that's existing within college athletics right now, that you need to be careful in different ways that you either perceptionally or not look like you're blaming the fans. The fans have all the power in college athletics right now. They have the power to basically make sure anybody has a job or doesn't. They can just turn the faucet off and that money dries up. And whenever that happens, the players are going to dry up, and you're going to end up looking for another place to work. And I'm not talking about Coach Yo. I'm talking about any coach. So while I do think that it's 100% imperative to support women's basketball, as good of a team as Coach Yo has put together, I don't think that it even needs to come across to where you're criticizing the people that is making your program go. I think that's kind of a bad look in this era of college athletics. Now, here's the other thing that I want to talk about. In this era of college athletics and the transfer portal window and all of that, no matter what decision an athlete or a person makes, you always hear, well, they can do that. They need to do what's best with their family. It's all about them. It's all about them. It's all about them. Yes, the random fan does not care about that. The only people that care about that are direct people that have collected them as friends over the years, which those people do exist in Oxford, and people that know them personally, yes, you can do that. Nobody is going to put you in jail for doing something. But your legacy at Ole Miss is going to be defined mostly by people that aren't those type of people. They're your cap and t-shirt fans. Those are the people that are waiting in line for hours to get Archie Manning's autograph at a card convention in Jaxson, Mississippi when you're 10 years old, like me. Those are the type of people that actually build your legacy. For instance, okay, I could have some facts wrong on this. I understand that. But the rumor is that Bradley Sowell is going to take a position as an analyst or something like that at Mississippi State. Okay. Bradley Sowell has spent the better part of the last 2 years branding himself media-wise as Ole Miss superfan. Going to Omaha, doing all of that stuff, being Ole Miss superfan. His legacy was about to be built as Ole Miss superfan. It doesn't matter that he played in the NFL. It doesn't matter what type of a player was at Ole Miss. He was branded and branding himself as that. Bradley Sowell wanted to get into coaching, which is fine. It happens all the time. There's lots of former Ole Miss players that have gotten into coaching. But his first get into coaching is likely going to be at Mississippi State. There's about 300 schools in the nation that you could get into coaching and do all that without affecting your legacy at Ole Miss. That is the one school that it will affect his legacy. I'll put it to you like this. Marcus Johnson was a terrific offensive lineman at Ole Miss. Did a lot of great things. He was, I think he's back there when Cut was at Ole Miss. A really good football player. Went on to be an offensive line coach. I think he's in Missouri now, but he was originally at Mississippi State. How many times when Ole Miss has an offensive line position come open do you hear about Marcus Johnson's name other than friends of Marcus Johnson? You don't. He's just become another football coach. And that's what this is. That is the consequence and the trade that a former player has to make. Do you care more about your legacy at Ole Miss, or do you want to get into coaching that badly? Like I said, you can do whatever. You need to do what's good for your family. You get that. But you need to also realize your legacy is getting traded in by doing that, especially going to Mississippi State. I do not care that Jeff Lebby was your friend. I do not care about any of that stuff. The only thing that I care about is that alleged Ole Miss superfan has traded in his stuff to be an analyst, not even an on-field coach, an analyst at Mississippi State. And you'll always be remembered as doing that. Again, do what's best for your family. Do what you need to do. All of that. You may feel like that you've given way more to Ole Miss than you need to give to. That's fine. But for your legacy and what you're going to be thought of from really today on, it's going to change quite considerably. It's not a bad thing. A person that has feelings that way, they're not a bad person. They care about Ole Miss and Ole Miss's family. Malik Heath transferred from Mississippi State to Ole Miss. Why is Malik Heath genuinely accepted and loved at Ole Miss? Because he chose to come into the family, not to leave the family. That's what it's all about. Ole Miss fans want to view this as a family. Like I said, do whatever you need to do. Take care of your family. Do what you have to do to be happy, but understand that there is a consequence for this decision, and there's no way that you can have your cake and eat it too. Just a couple of things that's been on my chest over the last couple of days. Anyway, thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day as we continue to turn our attention to the portal and look at basketball and baseball coverage. We got Derek Vandegrift coming up over the next couple of weeks. For your second listen, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every single league. For your second listen, go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 stream channel. For those of you on YouTube, we'll send you there right now. Anyway, Hotty toddy. Happy Monday, everybody.